Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on our new season of daily devotions or weekly devotions, as to say. As this new season here, we'll be going through the Psalms each Tuesday and going over those and learning from them. And so, hopefully, this will be a help to you here as we move forward in the devotions. And so, I do want to thank you so much for joining us here. We're in Psalm 10 this morning, Psalm 10, and this past weekend we had a wonderful time. It was a holiday weekend. We we started off with our just a work day. Actually, that was last weekend, but this weekend we started getting things put together here because we had Labor Day weekend, and so as we move forward through Sunday, Sunday morning and Sunday night, both services had some visitors, had some guests. We were missing quite a few people because of vacations and different things, but ultimately had a wonderful time in our services. And Brother Philip, thank you so much for joining us all the way from. We always appreciate you being a part of devotion, such an active community. Thank you so much for that. And but we had our Sunday morning service, Sunday night, and enjoyed as we've been going on a series on looking at soul winning and getting a heart for souls. I think it's so important for each Christian to have not simply a desire for souls, but to actively go out soul winning. It doesn't matter if you have a burden, you don't do anything with it. And so we went over that Sunday morning and or Sunday evening rather. And then yesterday we had our Labor Day picnic. And Labor Day picnic here, uh, we have so much going on. We had the jump house out with different games and giving away some prizes. We had lots and lots and lots of food. It was so nice. We had a lot of our new some of our new people join us here for our Labor Day picnic. That was nice to be able to get them acclimated and start fellowshipping with them. Enjoyed that. We had people here all the way up until about 10 o'clock last night. And so it just we like to fellowship. That's what we do here. And so it was really encouraging to be able to do that yesterday. But today we're in Psalm 10, and you say, well, why are we starting with Psalm 10? Well, before we went on the break, we had already gone through Psalm 10, and so we're going to start off with Psalm 10 here this morning. And Psalm 10 has no title. The titles were something that were written in with all the psalms. This is just a standalone song um, that you can tell was written from the perspective of someone who was struggling with the effects of the world and struggling with the wickedness that they were seeing around the world. And that plays such a heavy part within Christianity because there's such a pull for us to live righteous and a pull for us to do that which is good. And when we're seeing so much bad happen in the world, sometimes we think, "Oh, it doesn't matter anyway." Sometimes we feel like there's no hope. Sometimes we feel as though we is it even really worth it? Or does God even care about the wickedness that's happening in the world? And this is the perspective of Psalm 10 here this morning. He starts off in verse number 1. He says, "Why standest thou afar?" This is the psalmist talking to God. He says, "O Lord, why hidest thyself in times of trouble?" Why are you gonna hide yourself when there's so much trouble happening in this world? Before I get into it, I'm gonna have a quick coffee check here this morning. He said, why are you not getting involved when you know there's so much wickedness and so many perverse people in this world. Why not get involved? Verse number 2, he says, "The wicked in his pride doth persecute the poor. Let them be taken in the devices that they have imagined." One thing that we find here, or a couple things that we begin to recognize, is some of the characteristics of the wicked. The first thing that we notice in the wicked is their pride. Pride plays a huge part in the wicked and how they conduct themselves. The wicked, all men are sinners, but the wicked have pride that elevate their sin and almost boast of their sin. There is every single person in this world. We have sin within our life, but there's a lot of people that they, though they have sin, they're humbled by their sin. Though they have sin, they're not necessarily flaunting. The wicked, the wicked are those who not simply flaunt their sin, but they stand by it. They're bold in it. And he says, not only do they have great pride, but we find that they persecute the poor. And this is this is such a telling picture of what makes wickedness within our country and within the world. Those that look to take advantage of those who have no power within themselves. And this is probably the essence of why the psalmist here is so frustrated, because he's seeing as the poor are taken advantage of. He's seeing as these people who have nothing and have no power are being persecuted in such a way that they can't stand up for themselves, and they don't have the money and the means to be able to take take on what's happening in their life. And the psalmist here is seeing it, and it's making him furious. It's making him so upset. He says here in verse number 3, "For the wicked boasts of his heart's desires." Once again, as that pride, the pride now, it comes out in the open. They begin to speak on their pride. They boast on their wickedness. And it says, "And blessed covetousness," or covetous, whom the Lord abhorreth. We find there is a blessing of desiring and wanting, and they're they're almost making it a good thing for those who are covetous. We find this a lot within our own society, within our own world, how the wicked, they they take great pride in their own sin, and they don't care what anyone says. "I'm gonna do things my way." And then on top of that, they need to take advantage of people that cannot speak for themselves and will not. We even find that how often they boast on these things. Verse number 3, it says, "The wicked through pride of his countenance will not seek after God. God is not in all his thoughts." You see, the wicked, they can care less about the things of God. But right now, currently in the United States, the fastest growing religion is atheism. You say, "Well, isn't atheism the belief there is no God?" Absolutely. But here's the thing, they're in their own belief that there is no God, they have centered around a set of beliefs, and it looks so much, and it mirrors itself so much to religion. Atheism mirrors itself in the way that it looks at creation. They speak on this thing as, uh, evolution and 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 they will lean heavily on science. And by the way, Christianity. Good morning, Mrs. Catalan. Thank you so much for joining us. Christianity does uh, go against the science. In fact, we believe that science only emphasizes God. However, atheism will take science and say this is disproving God. It's funny how all the scientists that begin to produce a lot of the laws that we use today within our scientific community, how most of them were God-fearing people, and they use their science in order to bolster their faith. But the wicked, their pride is so strong against God that they use science against who He is. They use their own life and say, "Well, uh, my life is good. I don't have God in my life. A lot of you Christians, you struggle so much." And they begin to use their own life as a way to throw it in the face of God. We find verse number 5, his ways are always grievous, thy judgments are far above out of sight. As for all his enemies, he puffeth at. He said in his heart, I shall not be moved. I shall never be in adversity. Here, the wicked, he allows himself to be puffed up against his enemies because he feels invincible. He he says nothing will move me. I remember so vividly while I was in Bible college, and I've used this before, but I remember a friend of mine who he was really battling within his faith, and we'd come from chapel and we heard a tremendous message. I remember I looked over at him and I said, "Hey, wasn't that a great message?" And he looked at me and he said, "I've heard some of the greatest preachers that have ever preached." He goes, "None of them move me." He goes, "Why would that message move me?" That statement has shaken me since my years at college, because that in essence is the boldness. You say, "Well, he was at Bible college, surely he would he just he wasn't wicked." No, no, we're talking about a guy who was trying to fight away from this and felt like he had no other way but to go to Bible college. This was not someone who truly desired to be a part of those things. We move on, and he says here in verse number 7, his mouth is full of cursing and deceit and fraud. Uh, some, some things that open my coffee here. Some descriptors of those that are wicked. Number one, their mouth is full of cursings. Now, I've known I've known Christians who curse. I know uh, I've known non-Christians who cursed. Uh, I've known so many people who curse, but a surefire descriptor of someone who is wicked is someone who does not know how to control their mouth. It's just so hard for me to. I've spoken like this my whole life. It's really hard for me to do it. No, no, no. The Bible says we walk in the spirit, we shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. We will be able to harness ourselves when we truly yield ourselves to the Spirit. Cursing is a poor reflection of Christ. It's a poor reflection of our faith. Not only that, but here we find cursing, deceit, lying is a poor reflection of our faith in Christ. Why? Because Jesus speaks truth. Why would his people speak other things outside of the truth? Why would they speak deceit? What do we know about lies? Well, Satan is the father of lies. So when we begin to go against the truth, we begin to emulate Satan. So not only is cursing and deceit a part of the wicked, but we also find here that fraud. Fraud is being fake. Uh, there's I'm not someone who gets frustrated or um, I'm a relaxed person. I don't judge. I normally don't judge people the wrong way or anything like that. But a fake person, I cannot stand. Two of my biggest pet peeves are those people that are fake and people with bad attitudes. I cannot be around those people. Now, that doesn't mean I don't love them, doesn't mean that I don't try to help them, but I struggle. My spirit struggles around those type of people, and wickedness is found in being a fraud. Well, we find that through the New Testament as we look at the Pharisees. The Pharisees so often were, they would preach the the law and they would hold people to such a high standard, but they never held themselves to that standard. And we find this within the wickedness of today, and we see fake Christianity, we see lies amongst Christians, and we hear cursings in our groups, and we go, I, I don't understand this, God. Why do you allow this? It says here, verse number um, Verse number 8, he sitteth in the lurking places of the villages, in the secret places doth he murder the innocent. His eyes are privily and set against the poor. We find here that the wicked seek to do harm to those who are undeserving. The wicked seek to do harm to those who are undeserving. This is such a picture of our. In all honesty, I read this and I see this within our country. I see this within our churches. I see this in our government. And it's so sad when we begin to witness these things, and it's hard to keep your faith strong. I wonder, and I begin to think, why is it that there's not more Christians that are sold out for God? And when you begin to see these things around, it makes it very difficult. He continues on, uh, verse number 9. He lieth in wait in the secretly in the lion den. He lieth in wait to catch the poor. He doth catch the poor when he draweth him into his net. He croucheth and humbleth himself, that the poor may fall by his strong ones. We find here a fake humility, a fake caringness. Here, in order to catch people in his trap. I believe this wholeheartedly with our government. And I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican. Both sides are heavily corrupt. I have no problem. I think Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are completely corrupt. I believe Donald Trump is completely corrupt. I don't know much about his VP. candidate here, but completely corrupt. I do believe one's less corrupt than the other, but you don't. There's some fake humility happening on both sides, fake caring, in order to catch people, to deceive people. We find that in churches. There are so many there are so many false shepherds out there that they act like they care. And they have to be careful about their friends. That they act like they're our friends, but they're just trying to see what they can get. Verse number 11, he has said in his heart, God hath forgotten. He hideth his face. He will never see it. I see two things here. Number one, I see the arrogance of this wicked person that thinks that God, he just forgot. He doesn't care. And this arrogance to think that God doesn't care is indicative of his lack of knowledge of who God is. Because we understand God doesn't care. God keeps a tally on all. The second thing I see here is the recognition that he knows he's in the wrong. He knows that God should be doing. I find it so interesting. The idea of being an atheist, the idea of being someone who's anti-God. Why would you be anti-God if you don't believe in it? You don't find people anti-Easter Bunny. You don't find people anti Santa Claus. They don't believe. But when it comes to God, when it comes to Jesus Christ, that immediately, oh no, no, I don't believe it. No, no, I'm against that. Because there's a recognition, they understand that what they're doing would go against God. Now we begin to see the psalmist as he begins to call out to God here in verse number 12. He says, Arise, O Lord, O God, lift up thy hand. Get out the humble. Who are the humble? Humble are those who understand that they're sinners, but yield themselves to an almighty Savior. He says here, Lord, arise, take your place. Do not allow your name to be disparaged because you haven't done anything. He says, verse number 13, Wherefore doth the wicked contempt God? He has said in his heart, Thou wilt not require it. He's saying, Lord, he thinks that you won't do anything. Thou hast seen it, for thou beholdest mischief and spite, and require it with thy hand. And he says, The poor committeth himself unto thee. Thou art the helper of the fatherless. I know who you are. He goes, I know you've seen it. And by the way, God does see it. You don't think God sees the wickedness within our country, within the world? You don't think God sees the way people abuse and take advantage of those that are less fortunate? You don't believe God sees those that have shook their fist at an almighty God? He sees it. And he is a God who takes care of those who can't take care of themselves. That's why at the end of verse number 14, he says, "Thou art the helper of the fatherless." The fatherless are those were people that either their father had died or had run out on them. And if you didn't have a father in this society, this culture, um, your chances of survival were very small because you didn't have a breadwinner. You didn't have anyone to bring money into the household. He says, our God is someone who takes care of those who can't take care of themselves. Such a contrast between the wicked. He says here in verse number 15, break thou the arm of the wicked and the evil man. Seek out his wickedness till thou find. Now, you say, well, why would a Christian pray a prayer like this? That is that doesn't seem very Christian like. Notice that the psalmist is not going out trying to break the arm of the wicked. He is asking God to do it the right way. See, the psalmist is probably undergoing the persecution, the difficulty, the hardship that the wicked is putting on them. And rather than trying to take matters into his own hands, he's allowing a righteous God to do it the righteous way. And not only that, but when God judges the wicked, it stops others from doing wicked. One of the reasons why justice is so important is because justice helps prevent others from doing things that they should not do because they don't want the same penalties. Oh, and that yes, that's the lowest form of morality, not wanting the penalties. But let me tell you something, it keeps people. And here, what he's praying is that, Lord, you just keep us safe. Show your power, show your justice. Verse number 16, the Lord is king forever. Him being king shows that he is in control. He is king forever. The heathen are perished out of his hand. Lord, thou hast heard the desire of the humble. Thou wilt prepare their heart. Thou wilt cause thy ear to hear, to judge the fatherless and the oppressed, and the man of the may no more oppressed. Here, you know what he's saying here? He's saying, you're in control. You're the one that has the power. You are, I know that you heard us. And because you've heard us, you're going to start preparing judgment for those who have done. And then he says something in that last verse, in verse number 18, he says, to judge the fatherless. That word judge, oftentimes we hear judge and we think negative connotation, but um, you can have a judge preside over a case and become the victor in that. Here, as he's saying, judge the fatherless. In essence, he's saying, defend the fatherless and the oppressed and the men of earth may no more oppress. Here he's saying, Lord, stand up for us, defend us, protect us, help us. Here, this is a psalm, an incredible psalm here. On yes, the arrogance of the wicked. We get to learn the characteristics of what a wicked person is. But number two, we get to see the perception of the wicked. The perception of the wicked is recognizing that there is a God and he should be doing harm to me. He should be judging me. And either you can boast in your wickedness or you can humble yourself in your wickedness. And then lastly, we find the response of those who are persecuted. Well, what is the response? Lord, Protect us. Help us not to fall in the trap of the wicked. Help us not to get to the point where we continue to see them prosper while we are continually oppressed. Oh, this is a prayer. I pray this for our country. I pray this psalm here for our government. I fear that our government is an oppressor to its own people. Our government cares so little about our people and so much about their own gain. I pray this for our churches, that those that are seeking to do harm to our church, that they would be removed. I pray that we would have people that are strong in faith, that they would stand on the side of God and recognize that it is God. He is King. He is the one in control, and that may He be our protector. I hope this was a help to you here this morning. I hope that you would like these videos and share it with others. It allows us to get a further reach. We're going to be starting to do this every Tuesday at 10 a.m. And I hope that you would join us for that. And those that are watching on the replay, please be sure to leave a comment and like the video as well. And we're so thankful that for you to be a part of our online ministry. Continue to help us as we continue to move forward here throughout the year. Thank you so much. Thank you for